Okay, I think we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 15 of the Technology for Good Hangout. My guest on the show today is unable to make it, unfortunately. In the last few minutes I've learned that her webcam was stolen or disappeared from her computer, so when she got to work this morning it wasn't there and couldn't come on the show as a result. So we are going to go ahead with just me today, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. But we've decided we will reschedule this guest and she'll come on in the coming weeks. So we'll have her back and that'll be good. In the meantime, it's just myself today. I've invited a couple of others, but it was very short notice, so I don't think they'll be able to make it either. So we'll go ahead with just me. And we will go into the first stories. I'll look for the screen share button. And the first story that we'll talk about today is the large study that came out of the US government. I've already posted the links in the notes for this event, so you should be able to see it there. This was the National Climate Assessment Report released by the White House. And basically the bottom line of this report is that climate change is here and now. It's an official report out of the US government, as I said, from the White House, released by the White House, with White House, a lot of big White House scientists, or a lot of big American scientists, including John Holdren. There's John Holdren here, and there's a video of him here. He is Barack Obama's advisor, science advisor. So he's headed up the release of the report, and it found lots of changes to the climate in the US. So a lot of stuff to digest in that report, and basically it just says what we already knew. Climate change is here and real. And I see Sonia's just jumped in. Let me just hang on a second there. Get rid of the screen share. Sonia, you've just jumped in here. Not sure you meant to, did you?
No, I didn't. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, we'll keep going. I'll just there's a control room here, and okay, that's it. Sonia jumped in by mistake there. We'll keep going. The next story is a news story out of the way. And before I go on to the next story, just a quick comment myself here, if I can. Where's that screen share button gone? There it is, gone. And yeah. Speaking of climate change, it's the start of May, and I'm already wearing the Panama hat. So we know it's getting warmer. Anyway, we'll go back into the stories. And we can see the first big story that I came across this week that I thought was interesting was this story from governing.com about the city of Santander in the north of Spain. And it's a nice story about how the city has deployed over 12,000 sensors throughout the city, and they're monitoring everything from parking spaces and parking spaces that are available, the amount of trash in containers, the traffic. They measure the pollution, the size of crowds on the sidewalks, on the pavement, all kinds of things like that. And it allows the city, as I've highlighted here, to adjust the number of waste pickups that are needed on a given week, how much water to sprinkle on the parks in the city. They do things like they've got LED lighting, and they measure the amount of foot traffic on pavements at night time, and they can dim the lights if there's nobody on the street, and then pick up the lighting again as people go onto the street. So they're making the city a better place to live in, reducing, as I said, pollution, helping people find parking places faster. So there's kind of a twofold side of this. The city takes in the data from all these sensors, and it adjusts then its response. So as I say, it reduces the amount of irrigation to the city parks if it's been raining. It changes the lighting on the streets in response to whether people are there or not. But also the residents of the city can get this information on smartphone applications as well, and they can see where they can park, they can see when the next bus is due, they can see history of nearby buildings and these kinds of things. So there's all kinds of aspects of this, both for the citizens and for the city government as well. So it's, and you know, Santander is not alone in this, but this is just a nice little case study of one particular city that have gone all out on sensors, and this kind of thing will become more the norm than anything else, and Santander, one of the cities leading the way in this. And then we see, speaking of cities and buildings and that kind of thing, this company called Fluxx, who've emerged from Google's Moonshot factory. So Google had this kind of factory for generating solutions to some of the large global problems we have, and a company that was in that and have come out of it is this company called Fluxx. And it's led by a group of Googlers, Michelle Kaufman, Jen Carlisle, Nick Chim, and Augusto Roman, and they have brought out this and gotten funding, a lot of it from Google itself, but also from firms like DFJ and Borealis Ventures, Andreessen Horowitz, and Google, as you'd expect, have invested in it. And what they do is they help in the building area, because you know we've got about 3 billion people who are going to be looking for homes in the next few years, and that's a hell of a lot of building stock, and we wanted to make sure that this building stock is built in a way which is appropriate, a way which is non-wasteful, a way which maximizes quality of life and minimizes energy consumption, and that's one of the things that Fluxx is claiming to do. So it's good to see that coming out. And then we see on the site of one of the developers, Michelle Kaufman, we see a case study, the Big Sur Monastery. It's a monastery in the U.S. on the Pacific coast, and there are three posts about this Big Sur Monastery on Michelle's blog, talking about different aspects of their use of their software in the development or the redevelopment of this monastery for a group of monks. So that makes for some interesting reading, and there are some nice points made there. Moving on, and Nokia, speaking of kind of smart environments, Nokia has put $100 million aside for a smart car fund, and this is a fund to develop software in the connected vehicle space. It's cool to see, because this space is a space that's really taking off, and Nokia, after just selling off their their mobile business, or their handset business at least, to Microsoft, have been kind of casting around, I think, for something else to do. And this space is one that's opening up, and it's one that they already have a footprint in anyway, because they have their mapping solution, which is done quite well. So they're looking to invest in software in this area, and the area for the kind of the connected car, the one where you've got in-vehicle applications, and it's not just for things like entertainment in the music area, but or in vehicle, but also for things like vehicle-to-vehicle communications, the kind of way that airplanes at the moment have airplane-to-airplane communications in flight, so that each airplane can see each other airplane around it, and then avoid collisions. Well, similar technology is being developed for cars, and I see Karen Tillotson has just left a comment there saying hello. Hello, Karen. Good to see you. Thanks for dropping in. So yeah, Nokia are getting involved in this, and there are a lot of other players in this space as well. Apple have their CarPlay system, and Google have one as well. So this is a space that's really heating up, and it would be good to see applications in this for reducing collisions between cars, obviously, but also lots of things like communications for getting the best route, avoiding traffic, avoiding collisions, getting parking places, booking a parking place before you get, so you're not driving around the city centre looking for a parking place. All these kinds of things are all coming, and some are already available. So the more people that jump into this space, the better, obviously. Xerox joins automakers to build a smart car testing ground, so that's more in this space again. And we see that Xerox, the copy company, as most people would think of them, the photocopy company, they've jumped into this space because they're already kind of in this space. Most people might not be aware, but Xerox are a big player in the kind of back-end systems that are used in transportation, particularly in kind of parking environments and also in transit. So a lot of the transit authorities, the metros and things like that, use Xerox software. So the guest we're going to have on this show today is from Xerox, and it's a pity she couldn't make it. But as I said, she'll be on in the coming weeks, and hopefully we'll be able to discuss this story with her then when she does come on the show. Staying in transportation, and there was an interesting story coming out of Sweden, and it talks about electric ferries. So the ferries in Sweden, there's a lot of them required in Stockholm, for example, because Stockholm is spread out amongst 14 islands. So this particular ferry, what they've done is they've taken out the diesel engine, and instead they've put in a pair of 125 kilowatt electric motors mounted on the side of the boat. And this is fantastic. It gets the boat where it's supposed to go in the same kind of time they would with the diesel engine, and then when they get there, it takes 10 minutes to recharge the battery, and it cuts costs of the ferry operators by 30%. So that gives other ferry operators a huge incentive to carry out an electric conversion. So electric ferries, I mean, who would have thought, saving money and also cutting emissions drastically. And you know, not just that, but I'm sure significantly quieter as well. Electric motors make significantly less noise pollution than would a diesel engine. So that's all cool, and I would love to see more development in that kind of space. Changing topics, and we're heading into kind of the education arena, and we see that Intel have unloaded a bevy of new Chromebooks. So they've gotten together with different manufacturers, and they had a press conference on Tuesday, and they announced basically every PC vendor on the map has made a contribution to their portfolio of Chromebooks, and a lot of them are going to be headed into the kind of education arena. And you're seeing now more and more classrooms where kids are bringing Chromebooks or tablets to their class, and it helps enormously with the education. I see it in my own kids' classrooms, the kids bringing tablets and Chromebooks, as I say, from Asus, Lenovo, Apple, Samsung as well, bringing these kind of devices into the classroom, and that way, while in the class, they're able to look up stuff on the internet. It's a real change in education, and one that's long overdue. And you see Microsoft jumping into this space as well. They've released a plugin for PowerPoint known as Mix, and it's still in beta, but they've the beta version they've released, they explained that what it does is it turns your PowerPoint presentation into an interactive online lesson. And basically what you can do is you can add audio and video of yourself giving your presentation. You can write on the slides as you present them. You can insert quizzes, practice exercises, and more, all from within PowerPoint. They say it's like a screencast, only better. The rub is all you need is Office 2013 and the free Office Mix add-in. So if you have Office 2013 and you can get this add-in, you will be able to get it when they release it. As I say, it's still in beta. But if you were an educator, this is a possible solution for you. As against that, though, the other release in this area this week is Google's Classroom application. And their Classroom application is part of their free apps for education tool set, and it's to help teachers create and collect assignments. The interesting thing about this is that it's free. It's again in beta, but they're saying for schools using their apps for education suite, it will be available in September of this year. It helps teachers create and organize assignments, provide feedback to their students, and communicate with their classes. It's browser-based, so you don't need an Office 2013 application. You can run it out of a browser. Students log in. When they log in, they get a screen giving them their assignments from their different teachers, something like this, and they see what assignments they have, and then for the teachers, they get to see something similar with all their students there, and they get to see who has given, who has submitted what assignment, when they submitted it, how much of it has been completed, so they can gather all this information from their students, and it saves the students having to print stuff out and submit it, and it saves the teachers from having to go around, collect the assignments, and it saves the students as well from, the teachers as well from, having to correct papers, bring them home, having bags full of papers from different students, and so on and so on. So that's all good. In the smartphone kind of space, one second now, I'm just going to kill the sound there. Stop that. So in the smartphone space, ARM, the chip manufacturer, has said that they expect 1 billion entry-level smartphones in 2018 and $20 smartphones to come out this year. This is going to make a huge difference, I think, globally. Basically what it boils down to is the fact that right now, not everyone has or can get their hands on a smartphone just for cost reasons. Whereas in the coming 12 to 18 months, I think all phones are going to become smartphones. Basically, the price to create smartphones is dropping daily, as we see with any kind of technology. The price is dropping daily, and what we'll have is it'll be so cheap to manufacture them that every phone basically will have an Android-based operating system, for example, because that's probably the cheapest one for the manufacturers to use. It'll have the cheap chipsets as well. So basically everyone will have access to the internet on their phone. And this is going to change enormously the landscape globally on how people access information. Because sure, here in the developed world right now, everyone's got a smartphone, or most people have a smartphone. But in the developing world, it's a very different scene. And you've got internet penetration rates in the developing world in single-digit figures, somewhere in the kind of 0 to 10%. And when that changes to 20, 30, 40, 50%, and it's all on smartphones, that'll change how we need to generate websites. It'll change commerce in the developing world enormously, and it'll democratize internet access. It'll democratize access to education. It's going to make huge changes, and we'll see massive jumps in GDP in the developing world. And it's something that's coming, and it's coming in a very short space of time. It's, like I said, it's going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months. So that's going to be fantastic. The next story I saw there was one out of Apple, and we're moving now into the kind of wearables space. And this is a story around how Apple have started to beef up their already quite significant recruitment area or recruitment drive in the health area. They've added a team of senior medical technology executives, which apparently is raising hackles in the biotech community, and offering a hint of what they're going to be doing in the kind of iWatch space and the wearable technology space. It's been rumored for a long time that Apple are going to bring out a new product this year. It's been rumored that that product is going to be something called an iWatch. they've hinted at it, looking at LinkedIn profiles of people in the area. Lots of them have started joining Apple. We've seen Apple come out with patents in this area. So it looks like sometime in the next few months, Apple are very definitely going to come out with a wearable device. Presumably they'll call it an iWatch. We've already seen that they're bringing out a health book application in their next version of their iOS operating system, the one for tablets and phones. So they'll have on the software side, they'll have the health book application. And on the hardware side, they'll have some kind of device with health technology presumably built into it. So it's looking to be exciting, and it's looking at the kind of people that Apple are taking on, that they're taking it extremely seriously. So it's going to be fascinating to see what they come out with. And then we see news coming out of this ArmSignal biometric smartwear. And these are shirts designed for apparently fitness geeks and quantified selfers and you, according to this headline from VentureBeat. And it's an interesting article about how they're making shirts that have sensors built into them, cheap sensors built into them. The shirts sell with a device, and you can kind of make out in this photograph here, the device clips onto the shirt, so it's not unique to the shirt. You can clip the device onto the shirt, the device talks to your smartphone, and then you can take it off and attach it to another shirt if the shirt is made by this company, ArmSignal. So the company's called ArmSignal, and they've generated these shirts with the sensors built in and this device to collect the information from the sensors, and then the device syncs with your phone and gives you all kinds of reports about it. The difference between this and a lot of other smart clothing, or sorry, smart devices or wearable technologies, is that the wearable technologies are often something like the Fitbit, or kind of a bracelet or smart watch type thing. And while that's okay for measuring walking, it certainly isn't any good for measuring things like your pulse. So you can't, for example, it can't tell when you're pushing weights, or if you're on a rowing machine or on an exercise bike. Whereas this has other sensors built in, and it's because it's directly on your body. It can measure these things, and it knows the kind of you're pushing weights or bench pressing, or if you're on an exercise machine or whatever. There's an interesting video at the bottom of this article, which gives you a better idea of the device, of the clothing, and of the kind of measurements and reports you can get from it. So if you're interested in this kind of space, it's one to watch. The T-shirts start off at $199 for one, or two for $269. So you get the device as well as the T-shirts for that price. It's expensive. So I think initially only people who are extremely interested in this space will want to jump into it. In time, though, like everything else, the price of this is going to fall, and then we'll see more people. And bear in mind when you're looking at this kind of space that while it's expensive initially, for people who are interested, they might be able to justify it. But as I said, as time goes on, the price will come down, but also more companies will get into the space, and in time, this will become more the norm than the extreme. So expect a lot more clothing companies to start bringing out, quantified self clothing that tells you in real time your kind of stats on your pulse, etc. So that's interesting. And even more interesting, I saw a fitness tracking application starting to sell its data to city planners. The application is called Strava, and Strava is a fitness tracking app for people who are doing runs and cycling. So what they realized is that they had a lot of data, a lot of geodata on its users and where they were doing their runs and where they were doing their cycling. So they decided the best thing they could do, or something they could do would be to take this data and start selling it to cities, so the cities could see where people are going on their cycle trips and on their walks and runs. So I guess it's interesting for cities because now they want to, if they want to deploy, for example, cycle lanes for their cyclists, this gives them a good map of where they should be deploying them. For people who are doing morning walks, this might be a way for cities to, adjust their public transport, for example. So city planners can make a lot of use of this information. Their first customer is Oregon's Department of Transportation, who paid $20,000 for data from nearly 20,000 cyclists, so about $1 a cyclist. One possible downside of this is that maybe it's just reinforcing what the city already knows. If the city already has cycle lanes laid out, what's going to happen is they're going to see that people are using the cycle lanes or not. So I guess it's interesting for the cities because they start to see whether there's uptake on their cycle lanes if they have any, and if they don't have any, it's interesting because it tells them where they need to put them. So it's another example. I've talked about this kind of thing before of how people basically are becoming sensors. It's not just the fact that we are using devices that have sensors, but we are now constantly broadcasting information, and as cities and governments start to deploy this information for the betterment of our environment, then it's a good thing, as long as we're aware that this information is being used this way, and that's key to it. It's transparency around use of the information. Okay, moving into the kind of miscellaneous stories now before we wrap up. There's this interesting story coming out of the Vatican. And it talks about how the Sistine Chapel have deployed a series of LED lights. A big LED lighting project happened there, and they're completely changing how the lighting is being done in the Sistine Chapel to bring out the art in the artwork and the frescoes and the ceilings and the panels there in the chapel. I've been in that chapel a couple of times. It's pretty impressive, but now to have these 7,000 LEDs deployed in that chapel to really bring out the artwork there without doing any damage to the artwork. These 7,000 LEDs are being deployed by lighting manufacturer Osram, and they're going to do it in a way that obviously does absolutely no damage to the artwork. And they can do this because LED lights don't produce the UV radiation that can affect artwork. So these lights, because they're LED, they're low power, so they'll save somewhere between 60 to 80% on their energy for lighting the chapel and the artworks. They will light them better. They reduce their energy consumption, and they'll show off the artwork in a much better light, to coin a phrase. Sorry for that pun. So that's all great. I'm a big fan of LED lighting and digital light work in general, because it's a much better form of light than incandescent or CFLs, and because it's much more energy efficient as well. The other point which a lot of people don't think of is is that because the lifespan that LED lights have, they have a much longer lifespan than CFLs or incandescents. The maintenance on LED lights is much less, so they have to be changed far less often. So that's another benefit there as well for deploying LED lights. SanDisk, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, made an announcement that they're going for 4 terabyte SSDs. They're deploying them now, and they're hoping to be able to produce 8 terabyte SSDs in the next year. So that's great for data center class SSDs. But of course, all this will trickle down to consumer grade stuff in time as well. Google's competitor, DuckDuckGo, have come out with a major revamp. And if you're not familiar with DuckDuckGo, it's a privacy-focused search engine. and it skyrocketed in use following the mass surveillance leaks which came out. They've deployed a redesign on DuckDuckGo, and it's really nice, and they're going to be adding more requests to it now. I use it regularly. It's my default search engine. And I can recommend it. It's a really good search engine, a really nice search engine. And the last story of today is that Hewlett-Packard HP have made a $1 billion bet on open cloud. So basically what that means is they are deploying OpenStack, their own version of OpenStack named HP Helion. And it's great to see them jumping into the cloud space as well, the OpenStack space, even better because it's an open source product. But they've gone even further than that. And what makes this really interesting is that they are going to indemnify people who use Helion for IP. So basically, if there are any IP-related issues that arise out of using OpenStack in general, or HP's version of it, HP will completely indemnify any people who are using it, whether they are HP customers or customers of HP customers. So that's an incredible commitment on HP's part. It also means that people can deploy their own private cloud now, as they've been able to do. You know, HP haven't enabled this, but it means that people can now deploy their own private cloud using Helion and be completely risk-free in terms of litigation for IP, but also completely risk-free as well in terms of supply chain, because if you're deploying your own cloud, there's no surprises in the supply chain because it's your own infrastructure that you're managing using this software. So you know where the energy is coming from, unlike if you use a lot of the public cloud suppliers, the Amazons, etc., who don't declare where the energy to run their cloud comes from. So that's the last of the stories. I see that Catherine, the guest from Xerox, made it. Catherine, you join us a little late. We'll try.
I'm sorry about that, Tom.
You had a problem with the webcam. Don't worry. We'll reschedule, Catherine, and we'll bring you on a show again in a few weeks' time so that we can have a proper chat about the stories rather than just having you come in at the very end. Sorry about that.
No,
it's a pity you weren't able to get in earlier, but circumstances, these things happen.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it, everyone. We will be back same time next week with lots more stories in this space. Thanks for your time and interest, and we'll see you then.